Hey, welcome back to Parsha Bereshit. This is Aliyah Two. My name is Mike Koplitz. It is great to see you back as we continue to look into the details of Parsha Bereshit. Again, I remind you there is a book that accompanies this class. There is one book for all 7 Aliyot, and there's an individual book for each separate one. Let's take a look at some of the cultural points that we see here in 2:4-19. But actually, before we start, I'm going to ask you to go read that section. It's only 15 verses. So stop your video and go ahead and read. So we come together and we learn some very interesting things. The name of the Lord, the 4-letter, Yud, He, Vav, He. That's the name that God gave to Moses on Mount Sinai. We pronounce it as Adonai. You will see it represented sometimes as capital Y, capital H, capital W, capital H. In your English Bibles, you're going to see that name spelled Lord, but it's all going to be capped. So it's important to understand that we're actually talking about God's name at that point. Now, God's name suggests that the Lord is eternal as the essence of life and existence. The name is so holy that only the high priest pronounced it and on Yom Kippur, 3 p.m. in the temple in Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. After the temple was destroyed in 70 CE, the name could no longer be passed down to the next high priest. And we don't have that name anymore. Once the temple was destroyed, the office of the high priest was gone, so the name was never said again. So we really don't know how it was actually pronounced. In verse 6, it says that a mist rose above the water, I should say actually above the ground surface to water the earth. Now, the author might have been talking about his or her culture in this verse, because in the Middle East, a mist of water does form above the ground every day. And this mist is the dew that falls in the morning, and it was used for irrigation. There's a lot of terms in here, a lot of interesting cultural items. The term Eden, it could mean a moment, a season, a time, to make pleasant, delight, or temporal. The region of Eden, where the garden we think was, anyway, is believed to be somewhere between the Tigris and the Euphrates River. The interesting thing about this region of Eden, between the two rivers, is that plants grow without having to put seeds into the ground. So the plants grow, they disperse their seeds in that region, and it grows, and there's plenty of water for irrigation. And that's why ancient people, believe that that was the site of the Garden of Eden. Now, the tree of life is talked about, and there's 2 unique trees in the Garden of Eden. In Semitic languages, trees are often symbolic of humans. So vines are symbolic of nations. Cedars usually are referring to kings. The Israeli people are often spoken of as vines or vineyards. Now, the tree of life is a very complex metaphor. And the tree of life reveals that Adam is physical and mortal, and that this tree grants life, renewal, and regeneration. How often Adam and Eve ate from the tree of life is unknown. The tree of knowledge of good and evil is an interesting title. All knowledge of the universe was supposedly in that tree of knowledge. Now, the Lord did not want Adam and Eve to eat from the tree because they were not mature enough yet to understand and grasp anything. They were like children, and their knowledge that they did have that wouldn't have made any sense to dump all that data into their heads. Eventually, the Lord would have probably let them have that fruit of the tree. The fruit is symbolic of the knowledge of how the universe works. It is the misuse of information that causes evil. For example, the discovery of gunpowder in China helped humanity to dig tunnels and change the landscape. However, the evil of gunpowder, of course, is used to kill people. An allegorical note I wanted to mention is, everything that the Lord created was seen as good. How could the Lord create evil? An interesting question. And it's a fair question because one of the two trees that Adam and Eve were told do not eat from, of course, was the tree of good and evil. The knowledge of good and evil, anyway. The Lord did not create evil. Instead, it's humanity who created evil and has sustained it through time. This tree of good and evil can be viewed as listing what is helpful to humanity and what is harmful. Adam and Eve were not mature enough to understand that there were things that would be harmful to them. I wish we figured that out today, too. Therefore, the Lord was shielding them from that information until the Lord believed that they were mature enough to handle it. Now, a question that comes up as we question the narrative is this a second creation story? Well, the sage Hillel said that the scripture does not offer a second or more stories. Somewhat, the Lord expanded upon the first story. Therefore, there's no second creation story. Instead, this is an expansion of what we find in chapter 1. So, does verse 4 repeat that the Lord made heaven and earth? Well, this teaches us that the Lord created the universe for humanity's sake. It's up to humanity to see that the world is a place that we can enjoy being on. Humanity became the stewards of the Lord's creation because the Lord gave humanity the ability to think and to create within certain limits. Other animals on the earth, they don't know how to create. There's a question about, in verse 5, chapter 2, why was there no rain? Well, the Lord didn't have a caretaker for the Garden of Eden once Adam and Eve were tossed out. So he upheld the rain. Things became static. There was no growth until Adam was placed in the garden to attend to it. So there was no need for rain. The interesting question is, why did the Lord breathe life into the nostrils of Adam? Well, the Lord had decided how to give life to this flesh he created. The Lord had thought about doing it through the mouth. He could not because humans would use their mouths to speak slander. The Lord thought about the eyes, but the Lord decided not to because man could blink them for evil purposes. The ears did not work because they were going to hear blasphemy through the ears. Through the nostrils was the only way to go. The nostrils expel polluted air, and so do the righteous as they remove themselves from foul-smelling sin and they cling to the sweet scent of the Torah. I give you a map of where the different rivers were located. Of course, Tigris and Euphrates still exist. Some of the others don't exactly exist at this moment. I also show you an interesting thing in verse 7, verses 19, with a word that has a double yud in it in one place and a single yud in another. With the single yud, and this word is yitzar, meaning to create. When it has the single yud, it was where God was creating animals, because animals are just animals. The double yud is us. Okay, we're animals too, but the double yud says that God's spirit is in us, because the letter yud is a symbol for God. General question, to kind of close things out a little bit here. Why did the Lord bring animals before Adam to name them before he actually created Eve? So the Lord was trying to determine what type of helper Adam needed. By letting Adam name the animals, the Lord and Adam determined that none of those animals were going to be good for him. A spiritual awareness, real quick, the Lord created the universe for us. The creation of the earth and all its possibilities are for us. We need to show the Lord honor and glory in thanksgiving for all of creation, which is toward the betterment of humanity. The resources needed to have a world of peace and love, guided by chesed, which is mercy, and justified by gevurah, which is justice, are up to humanity. I strongly encourage you again to get the book because there's a lot more in there than what I could cover in these few minutes. I hope this enticed you and taught you some things you did not know about Genesis. God bless you. And as always, thank you for listening and shalom.